And good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of JMU Sound Off. I am Jonathan McNamara, this week Sans producer, so doing not only the hosting but doing the driving of the broadcast. So right off the top, I ask for your patience if we have some issues getting some people into the broadcast tonight. But we do have a great show for you tonight. We're going to have Trevor Mueller from Fourth and Inches podcast to talk about JMU's new transfer quarterback, Dylan Morris, coming from Washington. Good conversation there to let fans know a little bit about their new quarterback. We also have Nate Hazen on to come and give us a little bit of insight into what's going on with students on campus as we start second semester at JMU. And then we're going to bring in Caskill to talk a little men's and women's hoops action with some lots to talk about on both sides of the ball. And with that, we're going to bring in our other co-hosts. But as always, want to thank our sponsors, the Montpelier Collective. We still have a great opportunity for all fans of JMU to engage with a unique player opportunity to be a coach for the day. That experience is still available on MontpelierCollective.com. So get your raffle tickets, enter in for a chance to win that coach's experience for the game coming up against ODU. And as always, our friends from Skyline Financial Partners, we appreciate your support. It's because of both of you that were able to put this show on each and every week. And with that, we'll bring in Taylor and Steve. Guys, you had an opportunity yesterday to go up to Harrisonburg with Michael to experience the game at the Atlantic Union Bank Center as the Dukes do drop a tough one to our rivals at App State. Just right off the bat, Taylor, your thoughts on the crowd yesterday, the third largest in JMU history at the Atlantic Union Bank Center. Obviously, all of us wanted to see a win, but a great game against a team that obviously we're going to be battling with on not only the hard court, but the football field and every other sport on campus as this rivalry continues to heat up between the two proud institutions.
Yeah, it was a great game. It was a great atmosphere. You mentioned the attendance, the third largest ever in the Atlantic Union Bank Center, the second largest this year. I want to give a lot of credit to JMU, their sports marketing it was Duke Dog Reading Day. So for those of you that don't know, there's a program within some of the local school systems where kids have a chance to go for free. Their parents come. And so you did have a lot of community members in the building that day. And it was good because, with these JMU students are coming back to school this week. So you still had maybe some students come in early for it. We did have a good student section, I feel, behind one of the baskets. The other basket, mix of students and some of the community members in the general admission section. But JMU did a good job of knowing this was a game that was important to have a big crowd and kind of working in that community event aspect where people came in. So the crowd was electric. It was loud in there. There are multiple videos that I kind of took with my camera phone just to show off how great the atmosphere could be. And, it was tough to lose the way we did. It was tough to lose who we lost to. And it's really tough for a team that went out, started out 15-0 and now has gone 1-2 in their last 3 games. These conference games are going to be really important. I emphasize this every week, that to those in the Shenandoah Valley, we need you to come out and support the local team. To the alumni that have not been back, we need to get you out there. To the students, more than ever, we're going to have Nate Hazen in to talk a little about the pulse on the campus with the students here coming up. But it's just so important to have these amazing crowds at the Atlantic Union Bank Center moving forward this year, because unfortunately, the Sun Belt is significantly weaker as a conference in their net score, which means we cannot afford to lose many games and still have any type of consideration for an at-large if we were to not win the Sun Belt Championship. And I would urge people, speaking of the Sun Belt Championship, to start looking at some opportunities to go down to Pensacola. I myself did not go down last year, but I've spoken to a lot of people that did. They said it was a great environment, a great trip. Everyone said they highly recommended going again. So I will be heading down there this year, but look into an opportunity to go down there. Again, they have both the men's and women's teams down there. So it's a really great time. But as for the game yesterday, we'll talk with Ian about this a little later, but it just seemed to me from a purely fan perspective. So I know some of the players and coaches listen to this, and I respect their ability to disagree with anything I'm about to say, but they jumped out to a 26-10 lead. And I think a lot of that, from my perspective, is, I'm maybe saying this with purple tinted sunglasses, we seem to be the superior team skill-wise, athletically. I mean, we were top 25 team in the country for most of the season. And it kind of felt like the players knew that as they were playing, and there was a little bit of lack of fundamentals maybe in the beginning. But what really got us rallied back, and we were down 16 points there in that first half, and I think we cut down the lead to 5 at halftime, was You saw them, coming out of a timeout from Coach Byington, come back, play their brand of basketball, how they've been coached, how they play. And they got back just doing things the way they know how to do them. But then what I saw in the second half is there seemed to be a lot of hesitancy at times and a lot of, whether it was fear to take the open shot or fear to getting down low and going up strong instead of passing out. It just seemed like once we got back to where we were about to win the game, it was more about wanting to win, but we were kind of scared to lose. And that's not to discredit any of the players out there who, I say this every time when fans want to criticize the team or the coaches, I promise you that there was no one in that building more than the players and Coach Byington and his staff that wanted to win that game. So there's no fan that wanted to win it more. And those guys really gave it their all. But it just it came down to a couple shots at the end. We missed them. I'm looking forward to App State in 2 weeks on national TV down in Boone. And I really hope we see them in the Sun Belt tournament because I would love to play that team 3 times this year. So, Steve, what do you got?
Well, I'll just say this real quick.
I think we may need to.
Well, one thing on that game, though, the reason, again, we were after the loss to App State in football is how great is it to have rivalries again with programs that are truly unequal, that are going to push us. We obviously knew that was going to be the case in football. And now we're seeing it on the hard court and what they're doing to push us in basketball. I think that's what made that atmosphere so great. The social dialogue afterwards, we saw a lot of trolling from App State fans. That's what you want in a rivalry. So hopefully that continues to be the case. As I know going into this conference, pretty much all of us listed App State as the program we were the most excited to be a part of in the same conference. And the fact that that's not only limited to football and is going to actually play out in basketball and other sports, I think is going to just be one more thing that we all like about the Sun Belt. And is something that's really strong for both schools. Because again, we're going to have games and we're going to have, magical wins that we're going to talk about for years. And we're going to have games that we're going to lose to this program. And those are the games that we're going to all be talking about for a long time. And that's what's great about rivalries. And that's what makes it fun. So that was great to see on display, and kudos to everyone who made the trip up to Harrisonburg for a big crowd. Steve, I see you're smiling, probably for a lot of reasons. Your Commanders look like they're going to name a coach. And I see from the reflection in your window, you might be watching another game that's on the TV. What's on your mind before we get to our first guest?
Well, it's been a wonderful Sunday afternoon. Started about 4:45ish, and it just ended just a couple minutes ago when the America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, got their ass kicked once again in the playoffs. And you can count on it, just like you can count on January 1st coming, people, every year. Playoff Dak will be back, and you will watch that team tank. So it is such a wonderful thing. It's like watching a car wreck in NASCAR. Nobody gets killed, but you're really enjoying watching them getting banged up. And this was such a wonderful afternoon. But what's not what we're here to talk about? Here to talk about JMU. I agree with the atmosphere yesterday. It was good. I talked with an App State fan before it started and welcomed him to the AUBC because I always do that when I talk to folks. And he was very complimentary and said, "Hey, I was up here in the fall. Your stadium's outstanding." He said, "This basketball arena is unbelievable." I said, "This will be a tough game today." I said, God only knows how this is going to come out. And he goes, "This is what we were hoping for when you guys came to the conference." And that made me happy. And I said, you guys already had good teams. He goes, "No, not at this level. This is what we wanted. We were looking, you guys, Marshall, the Georgia, he said Georgia Southern doesn't count. We don't count those people, or Coastal, which I think is great." And he was just really complimentary, and they brought a nice group of people. There was a decent sized group of people trying to start their App State cheer or chant near the end of the game. So I got to look at the calendar and see if there's any way we can get down to Boone. I'm not sure if we can in January, but I'd like to. But really not happy about the loss. Agree with Taylor said. I was disappointed a little bit. And again, this is the fan in me, not the player. And I hope that the players and the coaches don't take this the wrong way. I was hoping we would take it up a little harder at the rim. Now they were not. This is how these games are going to get called. We got to get used to how they're going to call these games. And they weren't calling the walks. There were 5 walks that I counted on App State. They're not going to count they're not going to call them. They're going to let you hit. They're going to let you be hit. And it seems like whenever we do something, we get called on it. And they don't. But at the end of the day, you got to shake that off. And I'm hoping that now that we've had 2 of these games where we've been kind of punched a little, I have a feeling this coaching staff and these players are now going to rally out of that. And I think you'll see kind of a different style. in a little tweak style. And that's what I think we'll see. This is a very talented team. This JMU team is the best and the most talented team in the Sun Belt. But you can't read your own press clippings, and we don't play these things on paper. And who cares that ESPN says you're favored by 6? None of that stuff matters. So at the end of the day, we're going to make a run. Let's go on our next big run right now. Let's think about winning 1 in a row, and then let's start stacking it on. So I have all the confidence in the world that these guys are going to put it together. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. And we'll get back to basketball in a minute. But one of the news items that has caught the attention of the JMU universe over the last couple of weeks is the news that we have a new transfer quarterback. And when we were putting together a list of potential guests, once we heard this news, there was no one better than to bring into this discussion than somebody from Washington who knows a little bit about our transfer quarterback, Dylan Morris, and that is Trevor Mueller. Trevor, I think wait, you said it was 20 degrees there. You look like it's 20 below zero, but that's because you're in your garage braving the elements for us tonight. First of all, congratulations on the news of your university. It looks like naming a new coach to lead your proud program. First of all, the purple and gold looks good on you. That's something we share, but 2 programs with storied traditions, and 2 programs that had an awesome season this year. So congratulations on all of your success. We've also been through some of the same challenges, having a coach leave our program that we thought wouldn't leave, players who we thought were committed, decommitting and going somewhere else. So lots of shared experiences from our 2 fan bases. But for starters, first of all, introduce yourself in your podcast, and then give us a little bit of insight into Dylan the person. I know in our pre-conversation you were really highlighted, and then I know some of our other hosts are going to ask you about some football questions. But one thing that's come through in a lot of the articles is just how good of a guy Mr. Morris is, and in our fan base, you said, is going to be quite happy with the person that's coming to the East Coast. So yeah, give us your thoughts just again on your podcast and who we're getting in Dylan Morris.
Hi, thanks for having me. Also, that t-shirt you're wearing is unbelievably cool.
And you can get that at jmusoundoff.com. So we appreciate the endorsement. Your checks.
Looks like I know where I'm going after this. My name is Trevor Mueller. I host a podcast, 4th and Inches, a Husky podcast. It's me and my best friend Jake, and then we've brought in a couple of other Husky fans that have become friends, members of the media, Coach V and UWN. We are affiliated with RealDog.com. That's where I do my writing as well. Dylan Morris, you guys are going to fall in love with Dylan Morris. He is a lifelong Husky. He was a 4-star guy, but grew up, just a few miles from Husky Stadium. He went to Graham Kapowson. Was always going to be a Husky. His family goes to games. They're season ticket holders. We've seen him in Colorado. We've seen him in Arizona. They travel well. He's just an absolute gem of a person. He bleeds purple and gold. After he's done leading you guys to a successful season, he's going to probably transition into a coaching role. He just knows the game of football really well. He's the hardest worker you're going to have, and he's going to be a fantastic teammate.
Trevor, I guess I kind of have 2 questions for you because at JMU, and I know the way we kind of came to know each other is I saw you quote tweet about Dylan Morris when he announced he was transferring to JMU, and you said, well, I've just become one of the biggest JMU fans. And so that said a lot about who he was as a person, to see someone in your position, as a member of the media, kind of saying that just that alone would make you cheer for another team. So yeah. You did kind of touch on him as the person, as would you maybe even say he was kind of like another coach on the staff this year, in his role. But kind of talk a little bit about the relationship he had with Penix, and when that transition happened, when Penix came to take his job, and I shouldn't say take his job. I mean, he won the job between the 2 of these guys. He was brought in for that purpose, but love to hear about that. And then just kind of talk about what kind of quarterback you think that we would see with him. What are his strengths, weaknesses, and things that define him in that position?
So to start off, the entire fan base of Husky football is going to be James Madison fans. That's how much of an impact that Demo had on us. Like I was telling you guys before, there was 3 quarterbacks that were kind of all lumped together. They're all 4 and 5 star guys. There was Jacob Sermon, there was Demo, and then a Husky legacy with an uncle and a dad who played not only very well at the University of Washington, but in the NFL in Sam Heward. Demo was kind of one of those guys that was kind of pushed to the side. And when I was on a pregame show getting ready for that first COVID season game, and the report came out that Dylan was going to be the starter, I was shocked. And that season we got to see, his moxie, the way that he plays the game. He's got a really, really good arm. He's got a really good deep ball. He throws the ball extremely hard. He'll try to fit it into windows sometimes that he couldn't as when he was younger. But looking at him as a quarterback, when Penix came in, it was clear that there was an actual quarterback competition. It was between Sam Heward, Michael Penix, and Dylan Morris. And Dylan Morris looked better than he did, because the fact is we had John Donovan, who was, previously at Penn State, one of the worst offensive coordinators in the history of the game, destroyed any confidence that Dylan had in himself. And just under Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, you saw a new quarterback that had that confidence that he had in 2020 that he didn't have in 2021. And, they made it sound like it was a close competition, but the reality is when you bring in somebody like Michael Penix, he's going to get the nod. And he embraced his role as the backup, as a guy who understood the game at an elite level, and worked with Michael to become the best version of Michael Penix that he could. And the relationship that those two have, the close-knit relationship that they have, transcends football. And, when this was announced, Michael, it's the only time I've seen it where Michael made his own post thanking Dylan for what he had done.
That speaks volumes. I mean, just something like that. The one thing I did want to follow up with, when a lot of JMU fans found out about Dylan Morris, of course, they start to research and see, what his stat lines and stuff look like. There's not a lot of common opponents that us in Washington share, but as a transitional FCS program, a lot of people did key in on the game that he seemed to have the most struggle with in terms of turnovers and interceptions was the Montana game.
Yeah.
Before we went on air today, you were talking about a little bit, not so much him, the player, but maybe the system he was in. Can you maybe kind of dive into that a little more about where some of those, stat lines don't really tell the whole story?
Excellent observation. That Montana game was probably the lowest of the lows in the Washington program. And he was the one that had to be the quarterback. When Chris Peterson left, who had recruited him, Jimmy Lake took over. And Jimmy Lake was an ace recruiter on the defensive side of the ball, co-defensive coordinator that also coached cornerbacks that you're watching in the NFL right now, namely Trent McDuffie. He brought in John Donovan, who had struggled at Penn State, and they decided to run an archaic offense that focused on ball control. So they tried to be what Stanford was under Jim Harbaugh without the athletes to do what Jim Harbaugh Stanford teams did. So what you got is offensive linemen who were very overweight, not athletic, that were turned into NFL players under this new coaching staff. So not only did Dylan Morris not get the line that he should have as a quarterback, but they also ran these, halfback power plays up the middle with a fullback without the proper roster to do it. And so we're seeing a lot of 3rd and 9 situations where teams could key back on him and really take advantage. And the organization at that point where Dylan Morris was the starting quarterback was one of the most tumultuous times since Washington went 0-12 in 2008. Yet he battled. He continued to go out there, continued to look positive and confident in the media as things were falling apart around him, and really, culminating in that loss to Oregon where they're down 8 on a 4th and 11 close to their own goal line with, this clearly was going to be the last possession, and the coaching staff decided to punt. and Dylan braved that, stayed in the program, and is viewed as maybe one of the best Husky players, one of the most loved Husky players that didn't, start for 4 years or have a ton of success while he was the starter.
We've gone through this at JMU, so this is kind of an interesting play with Demo coming, because in our 2004 championship run, when we won the title, we had a starting quarterback, Matt Lizotte, that was beaten out by a transfer from Louisville, Justin Riscotti. And Justin led us to the title, and Lizotte backed him up and did nothing but support him and back him up. In the poster we have in the football office, or in the football in our facility, the Plecker facility, is Matt Lizotte running out with the team at that and he wasn't even the starter. Yeah. And that's the picture we have. So it's kind of an interesting piece with Demo coming our way. And I was going to ask you, tell us a little bit about his football IQ. You said he's, one of the hardest workers, fantastic teammate. Can you give us a little bit of insight in his IQ? You said he throws the ball hard and fits it into windows, but tell us a little bit more about, how bright he is, how smart he picks up defense, some of that football IQ stuff.
So a lot of it's behind the scenes, right? Because we haven't seen him play for the last 2 seasons outside of some mop-up duty at times, and one situation where he came in when Penix was hurt and delivered. He had a 3rd and long situation, got the first down before Mike came back in. What you hear every single coach, every single player that's been around him is he's a future coach. He understands the game. He understands the coverages. He's going to be a quarterback's coach once he's done. And you've seen the development even in the little bit. I'm fortunate enough that I've been able to go to practices that are open only to the media, and I've gotten to watch how much better he was from 2021 till now. And it's the way that he reads coverages. It's the way that he moves in the pocket. He's fixed and it goes down to fundamentals. He's, when he was the starter, he had kind of a low trajectory and got a lot of balls batted down. He's moved that arm slot up a little bit, which has allowed him to get over those defensive line hands. He's reading coverages, I think, better than he did, even with, the little bit of time he's gotten. The interception he had this year was off of true freshman hands for a touchdown into the waiting arms of like a linebacker or something. So we're talking about a guy who, in the little bit of time that we've seen him play, still has all the confidence that he had, but he's been taught the position, and him and Mike especially have gone through game tape and dissect it together. So that's kind of what you're getting as just a student of the game.
Wow. So, a true coach on the field, somebody that's had 2 years to help Michael Penix, and not in a rival role, but in a true teammate role. If I'm going to help us get to the national championship, and that's my contribution, is to help support you and get you there. That takes a special young man, because I can tell you, if I were that age, I'm not sure I would have it. I'm not sure I have it now at 61 to be able to do that, because that takes a special guy that really does put team over individual. And that's where I could see where he would fit with our coaching staff and Coach Chesney. And that's why I think this is really going to be a special year. We may be out in Washington playing in the first round of the college football playoffs next year, which would be kind of a blast to come out that way and have him play in Husky Stadium with you guys. And we all show up in our white, you guys are in your purple, and we have a blast.
Now that would be amazing. And you would have a lot of people in purple and gold, regardless of what happens, extremely proud of Dylan Morris, the person, and Dylan Morris, the stud quarterback.
God, that's great. Well, we root for you guys. I'm telling you, I root for you guys all the time. The only time I rooted for Oregon was when they beat the ever-living hell out of Liberty, who should have never been in the Fiesta Bowl to begin with.
Agreed.
But that's the only time I ever root for anything that has a duck on it. I always root for the Huskies, and so you guys will always have us rooting for you guys all the time.
Oh, well, I appreciate it, and you're going to love his cannon.
Trevor,
Thanks,
before we let you go, I do want to ask you just high level, because it's a topic that I think fans of just sports and college football in general. Your thoughts on your transition now away from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten and everything that comes with it. Just kind of high level, how has that been received by your fan base? Because obviously there's a lot of love for the rivalries and things that existed in your previous conference, but to make this move and into the highest of highest levels now of the sport, it has to be exciting in that regard as well.
It really is. The first part of it is definitely mourning the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 is what I grew up with. The Pac-12 has been around for over 100 years. The rivalries are deep. There's a lot of teams in that conference that I love and hate at the same time, depending on, the cyclical nature of college football. But the chance to be at the big boy table, if you will, is really impressive and much needed. Washington just got through hiring Jed Fish, as you guys mentioned, and the three coaches that were most linked to this are all from the Big 12. And that shows you the ability that Washington has, not only with the deep pockets of the donors, but it also shows you that the Big 12, which frankly should have been the one that disbanded, not the Pac-12, is going to be a place where coaches are going to be able to cut their teeth, but until things maybe even out a little bit, it's going to be the Big 10 and the SEC that are going to kind of have the pick of the litter when it comes to Big 12 coaches that, if you're a legacy guy, obviously that's a different story, but even look at what happened with Jonathan Smith as they were left out. Oregon State was leaving your alma mater for Michigan State. So it's sad, but it's also, in this situation, I love it. And it was really stupid that James Madison didn't have an opportunity to play in, something like the Fiesta Bowl or something like that. And hopefully the NCAA and everybody, the conferences, are able to try to figure out a way to make this more of a fan, player, and coach friendly system. But for what we have right now, I'm really happy to be in the Big Ten.
Awesome. Well, Trevor, some analyst at ESPN or Fox or whoever's going to be covering the Big Ten next year is going to wonder why there's so many fans from Virginia tuning into the Washington-Indiana game. And I can tell you there's no group of fans rooting for your program more than the purple and gold clad JMU fans. They'll probably be put up on a ticker in our stadium at some point. And I hope there's a lot more points on the Washington side than the Indiana side. So again, thanks for going outside and enjoying. Tell your family we appreciate you sharing some of your Sunday with us, and seriously, all the best to your program. Could not be more proud of what you guys did this year, and an amazing season. I know you will be talking for years and years to come.
Well, I appreciate it. Go Dogs and go Dukes.
Awesome. Thanks again, Trevor. Talk to you soon. And with that, we're going to go back to one of our focuses all year has been on trying to give the voice to students as well as fans. And we checked in with Nate Hazen from the JMU SGA a little earlier in the season as we start the second half of the school season for JMU. We thought we'd bring in Nate to the discussion again. Nate, first of all, how was your break?
It was a whole lot of nothing, and that's about as best as it can be. So I am not complaining. I saw family on Christmas. Other than that, I slept, I ate, I worked out, watched movies. Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Nate, first question for you. Obviously, there's been, the football season that was great in generating a ton of buzz and attention among the student population, and students, we said, showed up in numbers we've never seen and stayed for longer at games than we ever even could have imagined even a year ago. Now the success of the men's basketball program really presents an opportunity for students, as Coach Byington said on our episode last week, to really be the difference maker. 2 home games this week that are of significant importance for this program. Just your kind of thoughts as we start the second semester on where you think students are at, and if they're recognizing the moment that they potentially have to keep kind of this party going in terms of a record-breaking year and a record-setting year for JMU athletics, and the students being a big part of that.
Yeah, of course. We are witnessing lightning that was stuck in a jar, at least that I've noticed since I've been here. I'm a senior now, that was stuck in a jar for years, finally be unleashed. And the greatest part about it is when we're in the stands, or the football stands, basketball stands, what I hope to be, soccer stands, our perennial field hockey team stands. It isn't because of the record. Having a ranking is great, and the buzz behind having a perfect record and both college football and basketball has been amazing, and the national attention, but it's because we love the team, we love the school, we love the sport, and honestly, just in general, it doesn't matter what it is. You give students at James Madison University an opportunity to come together and share an experience, they're going to take it. And there's just no better opportunity than sports, and especially when it's successful and exciting, and we're playing with high stakes, and we're playing rivals like App State. Like, that is an amazing opportunity to come together. And so that's why I say, we're like you guys were talking about. We had a skid in basketball, and you want to win. Everybody wants to win. You want that attention. You want that excitement. But really, I'm a glass half full guy, and I can say the ranking's great, the perfect record's great, but that's not what we're there for. It's also been a privilege. Like, a lot of us know the players personally, to know them and get to know that they're human beings and watch them and just root for them. I've had the opportunity to know some of them as friends, and just root for them as human beings is just a privilege for a student. You know what I'm saying? And it's we're there for them. We're there for each other. We're there for the university. If we win, amazing. That just makes it even more exciting. But if we lose, terrible, doesn't change how much we love it. And that's just been that's just what being a JMU Duke is all about. And to watch it just be applied to sports this past year, it's finally we're getting the credit that's due for how amazing this campus is and how amazing the student body is. So amazing question.
No, and you hit on a couple points I was going to ask you about. One thing that every alum of not just JMU, but any school where their student section is known as something to be feared by opponents and something that's a once in a lifetime experience to enjoy as an attendant. You only have those few years in school to be a student in the student section, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every now and again, you get the the guy that graduated a few years ago wants to sneak down there and kind of relive the glory days. But there's really two things kind of going on at any men's or women's basketball game at the Atlantic Union Bank Center. You have lights went out.
Yeah,
you have the
right now.
you have the the game itself, which is entirely between the players, their opponent, and the coaches. But then there's almost this second activity, some call it the sixth man, right? That's in the stands. And I would like to think that students kind of have this feeling of ownership of that's our student section. That's what we're known for. That's our reputation. So wins and losses on the court, we can't control, but we can control being known as just one of the most electric, exciting atmospheres in college basketball. So with that being said, do you feel like that sense of ownership is inside a portion of the JMU student body? And how do you think, are there platforms like ours? Are there things that maybe JMU Sports Marketing, if they had a chance to, they were watching tonight and had to hear, what are some things that anyone can do to kind of expand that sense of ownership of win, lose, or draw? This is our student body. This is our house. And this is going to be an atmosphere that people are going to want to come see, not just the game, but to experience what it means to be in that arena.
Yeah, I'll comment on a couple things of that. One, you mentioned hey, there's always that guy 5 years down the road sneaks in the student section and relive the glory days. I welcome that person, because in 5 years I will be that person. So that's totally fine. If you're out there, please, and I'm very glad you mentioned student sections and you brought up the word electric, because Mr. Brown, I don't know if you remember, but the last time I was here, we had a brief conversation at the end of things about the reignition of the electric zoo of some sort. And, Rome was not built in a day, and it is a process, but vacation or winter break wasn't all just vacation for me. I had a lot of time to think on things. And I even met with members of the Student Duke Club to plot out, how does this work? How will this go? And kind of speaking specifically on the electric zoo in JMU basketball games. And we can do as many things as we can advance what is already advancing, which is we could have promos. We could have, for instance, I'm working on making a banner that says "Welcome to the Zoo" and plopping it over the rail, and working student do club with what promos, what shirts are they going to bring? Is it going to mention things? And like they're doing amazing things, working with different social media sites. But we are accelerating something that I already know with confidence is coming to fruition, because sports, no matter what size or form it takes, whether it be the Electric Zoo or again, this has brought on an unspoken bond between sports, brings an unspoken bond between students. It's like you feel more of a tribe, you know. I don't know who you are, but you were in those stands for that Saturday game with me, and we can bond over that because it feels like we have something to protect now, that we have a reputation, that we have a responsibility and an aura to protect as students here. And then it's important that we take pride as students, and like sports is like the battleground for those things. And it like naturally forces you basically to form this kind of bond, usually in a student section. So it's like we can manipulate and artificially like advance like the Electric Zoo coming into being, which I am a full-on believer that it will at some point. Hopefully, I believe this year, maybe the title's in there, but it is. You see that student section, you saw how it was on App State. That will only increase. And it's like we can advance that with whatever we want, but it's coming into fruition because that's just what our campus is. That's what we like to do. I'll just repeat my final things. I'll just repeat what I said. You give JMU Dukes the opportunity to come together and share an experience together. We will take it. And sports is just the perfect opportunity. So.
Well, man, Phil, don't call me Mr. Brown. Please call me Steve, because good
Gotcha,
Lord.
Steve.
It's all good. Feel free to take any of the ideas that we used back in the day. We used to bring the breeze with us. And so what we would do is when they would start to announce the other team, we would hold the paper up so that so we didn't pay attention to it. And then when they'd announce a player, we'd yell, "Who cares? Who's that?" You know, we'd have a blast. So do whatever you want and have some fun with it. You guys are already rocking in there, which is fun. It's so loud when you guys are there. My question for you is, are you guys going to be able to keep that up and go to, you know, women's basketball games and softball games and lacrosse games and kind of keep that whole momentum going up? Because I know those games are a little different, but they're still, they love having you in the stands. And I think the more students that we can bring to those games, the more appreciative all those folks are. Because like you said, a bunch of them are your friends of yours. So is there any effort, do you think, to kind of be pushing all those games and all those events to be able to go to?
That's the absolute dream, you know, and I've had conversations, not just with like members of athletics, but just conversations with people in JMU administration, the student government. Like that's the dream. We want this to spread. And it's like, I was thinking about it in here, like basketball and football obviously are just different beasts, but we have been so amazing in other sports. The ones you mentioned, soccer, softball, women's lacrosse. And it's like, we want this to happen. Nobody's like, all right, well, now that football and basketball pass, it's like, this is something that spreads. It's contagious. This spirit is contagious. And it's, to answer your question directly, do I think that it is something that will carry over? If I know my student body, it will. And like I said, it takes time. It takes process. We are only going to grow into this national stage, this aura of being a sports school and everything school, an athletics focused school. Unfortunately, I'm going to be walking across the stage, but you're all alumni. You know, that affiliation and loyalty does not end. It certainly won't for me. And this is a shameless plug, but I've gone to so many people in the football staff, athletics, even administration, being like, I don't know what my future holds, but there was a spot on the football front office. I'd drop everything and do it, because not just for the money, it's because something amazing is about to happen there, and it is happening, and I want to be a part of it. I still want to be a part of this university. I'm not the only one feeling that way. Like, this is something you want to hold on to because it's so special. And that's going to carry over into all these sports. And I know this isn't just my own hypothetical. I know people, this is something we talk about. We want this to grow. We want to share this experience with other deserving student athletes and all the other sports. They deserve to have that fan base behind them because it makes a humongous impact. And I think you all do a very, very good job of proving that and exemplifying that. So.
Well, Nate, I could say your passion and your energy reminds me of some people that are not only on this podcast, but some fans like the Eric Pitzers, the Zach Prices of the world, people who were in your seat trying to make a difference on campus, who took that energy and passion and now fuel their fandom going forward. So you could be hosting a podcast on a Sunday night like us some days. Lots of different ways you can get involved as an alum, and just really grateful for what you're doing as a student to help as a part of the SGA and leadership to drive your student body towards making an impact. Just know we're rooting you on, and we want to wish you all the best as you go through your last semester at JMU. Soak in every moment, man, and we hope to see you at some games as we go throughout the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's a pleasure. I love how you guys, I think you're expanding. I'm in a club. Shout out. It's called Talking Sports JMU. This is our student body for y'all. It's one of my favorite clubs, and the goal of the club is to talk about sports. Shout out Johnny. He's listening to this. He's the president of the club. He does an amazing job. And it's just how sports bond. And that's from a student's perspective. I know how you all do an amazing job letting alumni and students come together over the topic of sports, and an amazing job you do with this podcast. So I'm excited to see it grow. I know it will, and it'd be awesome to watch. And I'm relishing the opportunity somehow, some way to come back on here again. Being on here twice is already a humbling experience. So thank you all so much.
Careful what you wish for, because we're going to give you a mic. You could be another student correspondent. So lots of ways to get you involved. But seriously, tell all the best to your club. And Nate, trust me, this is not the last time you'll be on, no doubt.
Well,
awesome.
I'm humbled. Thank you all so much.
Thanks,
all right?
buddy. Enjoy the rest of the semester. We'll talk to you soon. And with that, we'll bring back our co-host for our final guest of the night, as a lot of attention been on not only the men's basketball team, but the women's basketball team as well. And we thought there was no better person out there than a former JMU player, former coach on the women's side, somebody who had a nice little professional career as well in the basketball ranks. Ian Caskill. Ian, thanks for taking some of your Sunday to spend with us here on JMU Sound Off. I know we've been talking a lot offline over the weeks prior to this, trying to get you on. For those who may not be familiar with your background, your story, we'd like to give every one of our JMU guests an opportunity to tell their JMU story before we get into maybe the X's and O's of what's happening on the court. So introduce yourself and your JMU story.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. Nate did a great job. He's a tough follow here, so I'm going to try to, match his energy and passion. But, I attended JMU from 99 to 03, grew up in Virginia Beach, born and raised, got recruited by Old Dominion pretty hard out of high school. Both parents were alums, but I took an official visit to JMU, homecoming weekend of my senior year in high school. And as you guys all know, JMU's a tough place to beat on homecoming weekend. So committed on the spot. And, I believe that, through all the distractions, finally got my career together, had a decent little end of my run there senior year, and then ended up in Europe for 13 years. Played professionally there. Sean O'Regan was a good friend of mine in college. We were both sports management majors. He was the manager of the team when I played on the men's team, and we stayed in touch. And eventually he got the head women's job, and kind of called him joking around and said, why don't you hire me? And then he was like, well, do you want to be my assistant coach? So like, sure. Packed up, moved all my stuff from France, and ended up in Harrisonburg for 6 years. So that's the quick rundown on my end.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and brag on Ian a little bit because despite him checking all three boxes of being a former player, playing professionally, and coaching at JMU, I actually had the privilege of, I shouldn't say of knowing Ian, but knowing of Ian, as we both went to the same high school. We were about 4 or 5 years apart. I'm going to shout out to my buddy Mike Davis, who's probably going to watch this at some point. And when I told him I've reconnected with Ian Caskill, he thought it was pretty cool because the two of us went to some of the Cox High School basketball camps back in the day, and they would have some of the players coach. And Ian was he was a big name in Virginia Beach at the time. I know he's going to play down this, but it was really exciting when he did get recruited at JMU and to be able to follow him from that, because I myself grew up going to a lot of Old Dominion basketball games, just living in that area. And Ian was going to a JMU team that was, coming out of the 90s there, where, not making the NIT or the NCAA was considered a bad year. And so I'm really excited to have Ian on here. I'm excited that when I saw him come back to campus as a coach. And so all of that to be said, Ian, our basketball coverage on the podcast, it gets in that gray area where you're trying to cover basketball, football at the same time. And obviously there was a lot of postseason football coverage that we had to squeeze into some of these podcasts. So one thing that we really haven't dug deep into is JMU women's basketball program right now. They were preseason picked to win the Sun Belt. They were first place in the Sun Belt up until yesterday. I know they lost to Troy at a close one there. I'm not sure of the standings where that falls right now, but I mean, this is still a JMU women's basketball team. I mean, at JMU, the standard, the bar is so high for women's basketball. It's almost like the conference championship appearance is a must. Winning the conference is almost the next given. And so talk to us a little bit about what fans who maybe aren't paying attention to the JMU women's team and what should they be looking for? Kind of how's their season going, and where are some of their pitfalls with some of the close losses they've had this year?
Yeah, sure. When I first arrived on campus, and I didn't know much about women's basketball before I got into it. I just was a guy who grew up playing basketball, loved basketball, and Sean gave me the opportunity, and I learned a lot about it. And Coach Brooks, Kenny Brooks, was the assistant coach on the men's side for my first 3 years at JMU before moving over to the women's team. And he built something very, very special. And we talked a lot, Sean O'Regan and I, our first year, how it's one of the toughest things to walk into a situation as a new first-year head coach, to live up to those expectations that are set, right? And I think Sean's done a great job in his, 8 years now that he's been there. Bunch of bad luck early on with some postseason stuff, but got it together last year. So shout out to him, first of all. I watch and observe the women's team because I have, a bunch of contacts that are still there. I think there's 5 or 6 players that I personally recruited still on the team, and Sean and I are good friends. We talk on the phone, once every couple of weeks for 30, 45 minutes, usually while he's driving somewhere to go recruiting and board. But, I'm still involved. I don't watch every single minute of every game, but I think I have a pretty good feel. And year in, year out, it's tough to live up to those expectations, right? It's a lot of pressure. You got to bring in the players. I think he's done a great job so far this year. I did watch that. I believe it was Toledo, one of the first games of the season, that kind of blew one at home. Unfortunate, but bounced back. I think they're 4-1 in conference now, right at the top of the standings. Just lost to Troy, which is, I've never personally been to Troy, Alabama, but I imagine, it's a tough place to play out in the middle of nowhere, and a very tough road trip from Harrisonburg. So, no shame in that loss. And, I know they have 2 home games coming up that they're looking forward to bouncing back with.
Well, and as a coach from the prep time, I mean, how hard would it be to the Thursday, Saturday road trip where you're having, and you're not traveling down the road to Richmond, Virginia or Norfolk. I mean, you're a ways away. I mean, that's got to play into some of the preparedness and just the wear and tear on the athletes.
It's tough. I mean, that's a long trip. Where they go, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, before going to Detroit, Alabama, turn around, less than 48 hours later, playing another game, right? These, you play a 7:00 start time on a Thursday night, get back to the hotel maybe 10 p.m. You're watching tape for a few hours. Whatever assistant coach has the next game is up watching the game that they just, the opponent just played, breaking down film. And then basically you have that Friday in between to, first of all, prep the head coach on what's happening, what you've seen as assistant coach, and then preparing the team with one, real practice and maybe a walkthrough on the day of the game to go through the scouting report. So the 2 games of 3 days, that's a really tough schedule. We did it in the CAA. It was a Friday, Sunday trip, but same type of deal. And those second games on the road, on a long road trip are always tough, whether it's a good team or a bad team.
And one last question before I throw it to Steve, and I do want to transition to the men's team real quick. And we talked a little bit about this the pregame. talk about, I know you're not a player or coach on this current team, so I'm not asking you to speak for anyone on it, but maybe more just you have a perspective that fans that have never played the game at this level or have never coached the game at this level have. And, this team comes out red hot. They're 14-0. And now these last two games, they're 1-2, specifically their first loss at Southern Miss. That's a good Southern Miss team, but compared to the other competition they had faced earlier in the season, that is a game they really should have won. And, playing a team like App State at home, App State had a great win against Auburn earlier this year, the second highest ranked Sun Belt team, but that's another game where statistically we were favored and for good reasons. How, as a coach and a player, do you think you kind of mentally take on this second half of the season, knowing that kind of the competitive advantage you had up until 2 weeks ago has kind of gone, and now you're really right there with every other team chasing that championship?
Sure. I mean, the thing about it is when you're having success that JMU's had up to this point, they have a target on their back every single game, right? Every team in conference is jealous that they're in the top 25. Everybody's coming after them. They're going to get everybody else's best shot. And, keeping up that focus day in and day out is not the easiest. College football is a little bit different. You play one game every week on Saturdays. 11, 12 regular season games, whatever it is. And it's a little bit easier to go undefeated. I mean, I might be wrong about this. I think the last undefeated college basketball team was Indiana in 1975, 1976. So you're not going to run the table that way. I'm going to spin it and say, maybe it's a good thing for this team to lose a couple of games right now at this point in the season, go through a little bit of adversity, get back on track, and make a nice run here to finish out the regular season and be ready for the tournament. Right? I had a couple opportunities playing in France to be on some really good teams where we ended up winning the championship. But we always dropped a game or two at some point when the season was dragging to a team that we should have beat. And that's really the nature of basketball, all said and done. It's frustrating as fans to see that and hear that. But, some days you're going to do everything right. The ball's not going to go in the rim. Some days the ref's not going to blow the whistle when you think they should. And that's the name of the game, right? Coach Byington's going to get them to bounce back and be ready to go for the stretch run here, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia's on a 4-game losing stretch out on the traveling circuit, and their coach today put out a nice, kind of a nice tweet. It's what he told the guys last night, which I thought was interesting, and it would apply to our team. He talked really about culture and character, and he said, it's all well and good when we're winning. How are you going to react now that we're not? And, are we going to work as hard on Monday? Are we going to come back? Are we going to pull ourselves out of this? I mean, I think they're 11-5. They're not terrible, but they've lost 4 in a row on the road. So, I think our guys are kind of going through the same thing. And you're right. It's normal. I mean, this is normal. What happens? We weren't going to go undefeated. I mean, I think Houston lost last night again. I mean, I think somebody else was up. There was a couple upsets last night, so it just happens. I'm going to talk to you about Europe because I kind of want people to get a flavor for where you were, how it kind of changed you living in Europe. My daughter lived over there for a bit, and I think you were in Cannes. Isn't that where your team was, in Cannes?
My last 3 years, yep. Mm-hmm.
Very close to a town called Bayeux. And for those people that I know this is not a history deal, but it's in the Normandy region. So there was a battle for Cannes. So I was going to let you talk a little bit about what you learned living in Europe, because I think if everybody has a chance and you can live abroad, it really, in my mind, broadens out your horizon. But wanted to hear from you of what you learned living over there and how much fun it was, and if it was fun, and just kind of give us some insight.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question, Steve. You're 1 for 2 on your French pronunciations. I don't want to be a language snob. Cannes is perfect. Everybody calls it Cannes. It's Cannes, the city in the south where the film festival is. That is Cannes. Bayeux is the proper pronunciation, but you were very close. I lived in France for 11 years. I have dual citizenship. I'm bilingual, so wanted to congratulate you on your pronunciation first of all. I've always loved World War II history for some reason. Both my grandfathers were in World War II. Always been a huge history buff in that. I like to tell people I know outside of history professors, I say I'm right up there with like people with knowledge of World War II. So living in Normandy, specifically my last 3 years in France, it was awesome. And, I've probably been to Omaha Beach and the American Military Cemetery there, 9-10 times. It's moving every time. It's a special place, and I encourage everybody to get out there and check that part of the country out. It's a quick 2-hour train ride from Paris. So if anyone is in France, jump on up there and check it out. But culturally, it was a great experience. I had no intentions of even moving back to the United States until Sean got the head coach job at JMU, and I'm describe myself as semi-impulsive. I kind of just was like, oh, that sounds cool. Let's move back to Harrisonburg from Con. But great experience, and I don't rule out moving back at some point and living there. When I get a little older and retire at some stage in life.
Ian, I have a couple of questions for you. First, just from your perspective, what do you think now with the collective coaching staffs of men's and women's basketball, to go from the Convocation Center, which had charm, had a lot of history, but to go now to what is obviously one of the nicer new facilities in the country in the Atlantic Union Bank Center, what kind of impact that has made and what kind of impact it can potentially make going forward? Now the JMU is consistently starting to put some big crowds in, particularly for some of these games like what we saw yesterday against App State, what we had against UVA, as this kind of basketball culture starts to grow at JMU and the fan base starting to embrace that, hey, your fandom doesn't stop once football season ends.
Yeah, great question. It's funny. I think it's a huge plus for the men's side. We could fill that place up, get more and more people in there, get it rocking. I was at the UVA game with my son when we beat them. The atmosphere was crazy. The atmosphere has been great for a multitude of games I've been to on the men's side. I think on the women's side, they've lost a little bit of that fan interaction. It's a 9,000 seat stadium. For some reason, attendance is slightly down, it seems like, from the old Convo where, the women's program really made its mark. So I'd like to see more and more fans involved on that side. But it's a great selling point. I know when I was coaching, when we were in the old Convo, we would show videos of what the new one's going to look like and sell that. And then as soon as it was built, that was the main selling point on the tours of campus. Check this place out. It's one of the nicest arenas on the East Coast. And, we need to just keep filling that place up and keeping it rocking.
And then my final question, we had Kurt Dudley and David Taylor on last week just talking about what a magical year it's been. I'm just curious from your perspective as an alum of the university, somebody who's coached, what this recent run of success across the board, not just this season, but lacrosse's run, the success of the soccer programs, just from you as a former student athlete, did you see this coming? And what kind of impact do you think it's going to make on the future of this program as we continue to every year seemingly find a new high bar mark where we're getting national attention in multiple sports and the potential long-term impact that has just more students, more eyes on our campus, a place that we all have come to love as more and more people understand what kind of a special atmosphere and special place JMU is.
Sure. And I listened to the episode last week, and I'm going to kind of steal what Kurt said. I can't say that I saw it coming, but I'm not surprised, right? Like when you visit campus, I'll use my experience as recruiting on the women's side. We would recruit against ACC schools. We recruit against Big East schools. And if we can convince a prospect to come to campus and see it in real life for themselves, we always had a shot with that person, right? Because that place sells itself with the new arena, the new facilities, and all the success of the other sports. That just grows the whole program and makes everything, easier to recruit across all levels. So, they're doing a great job. Coach Byington was a perfect hire at the perfect time. I have I put a lot of time in watching him run practices. Pretty tight with some of the members on the staff. We talk regularly. I know what he's all about. He's bringing this basketball program, football program into the top 25 at the same time is, something that is remarkable. I used to, tell people I'd be around and someone said, did you play in college? Like, I played at JMU. Like, oh, you guys played in the Final Four? Like, no, that was George Mason, right? And that's happened more times than I care to like to admit. But now it's that's not the confusion anymore, right? It's everybody knows JMU. We're a national story, and we got to keep working hard. I know the Montpelier Collective is involved with this podcast, and I think that's a super important organization. We got to get the money in there to maintain the success, because that's in this day and age with college sports, that's a necessity. So everybody's got to go in the right direction. Whoever replaces Jeff Bourne, has big shoes to fill, and needs to keep this rolling and keep it moving.
Awesome. Well, Ian, we appreciate your contributions to the program on multiple fronts, multiple times. You helped to grow and advance this institution into the future, and just know it's appreciated. We say it to every former player and coach here. It's because of what you did on the court that gives us something to talk about, something to cheer about. So just know it's appreciated, and to all your teammates and the kids that you coach while on campus, it matters. And we're just grateful for your sacrifices and contributions to the program as always. And we're excited that you're going to be joining us a lot as we go throughout the remainder of basketball season to share your insights, and just know it's really appreciated. And we'll give you back some of your Sunday night. All right.
Appreciate it. Really want to say thank you guys for having me on. Love what you're doing, and always here if you need me.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. Talk to you soon. All right, and with that, we have a little bit of an abbreviated final thoughts. It's just three of us. So, gentlemen, another great episode, great conversations across the board from all of our guests. Taylor, go to you first. Lots to possibly touch on in the final thoughts, but where's your head at as we wrap another episode of Sound Off on a Sunday night?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of give a quick overview of both basketball programs, and also get excited about looking forward to the spring season, because we still have another season of JMU sports to look forward to. If I feel like we're kind of repeating the same lines all over again after we did in football season. But if I told you by midseason the men's basketball team would be 15-2 at the win over Michigan State, and having been ranked top 25 for the first half of the season, I mean, I think most people would say that's a best case scenario. What's tough to, stomach being 15-2 right now is the way we've become 15-2. We went 14-0, and then we've gone 1-2 in the last couple of weeks. So there can be that visible frustration, but at the same time, we are very much in control and very much in a position to go down to Pensacola and be the team that takes home the Sun Belt Championship and gets a chance to go to March Madness for only the second time in about 20 years. As for the women's program, I did double check myself when I was talking to Ian. So we are now in a three-way tie for second. It's early in the conference season, so a game or here make or breaks kind of, jumping all over the standings. And so the women's team, actually, Sunbelt women's basketball, unlike Sunbelt men's basketball, has a very high conference net ranking. I mean, they are a top 10 basketball conference in women's basketball. So the women still have a lot of good games on their schedule that will continue to elevate their net. And then when you're talking about postseason play, I think that obviously they're going to be the favorites to win the championship. But when you're looking at an at-large possibility, or possibly even a berth in the WNIT, you have two teams here that statistically right now will be playing basketball in March. And that's a really exciting thing to say for JMU basketball. And as we look forward to this spring season, I mean, you got sports like you have women's lacrosse, which has become a perennial power over the last couple of decades, and obviously the national championship a couple of years ago. You have a softball team that's only a couple of years removed from the College World Series. And then you have a baseball team, the Sun Belt Baseball League. People throw around the term P5 in a lot of sports. Sun Belt Baseball is a P5 conference when it comes to baseball. I mean, Sun Belt Baseball is a top 5 conference, and you could have a team be in the top 100 and still not be in the top 8 or top 10 of your conference. It's that good. So I think just, kind of state of the athletic program to say is we're in a very good position. We're in a much better position than we probably thought we were when we were going to start the season. There is still so much to look forward to in these next coming months. We're going to have spring football. We're for better or for worse, the transition of an athletic director that I still, the shoes that are going to be there to fill by that new person are going to be incredibly large, but Jeff Bourne is going to be handing over an athletic department, which, like Ian said, a lot of people probably couldn't have imagined at the time, but aren't surprised that it's gotten to this point. And so, enjoy the smack talk on social media. It is hard when you lose a game like you did Saturday to a team like App State, but I think the energy and passion that Nate brought in just saying, we're an everything school, we are running on all cylinders right now, things have never been as good holistically for JMU as an athletic program, as a university. It's a good time to be a Duke, and I'm just excited that our platform has grown to the point where we can have any kind of impact or influence on that at all.
Awesome. Great comments, Steve. Your final
Yeah,
thoughts.
a couple things. So for on the basketball side, this week we've got a double header. We've got the men are home against ULM on Thursday. The women are home against Georgia Southern. Saturday we're home against Marshall, and Saturday the women have ODU. So there's not a whole lot to do in Harrisonburg in January when it's cold. So there's plenty of partying I know you can do, but you can do it after these games. So come into these games, go for a doubleheader, have some fun. After that, the men travel to ODU on the 24th and then are at App State on the 27th. The women still have a 4-game homestand. They're home next week on the 24th against Marshall, and then they're home against App State on the 27th. So if you can't go down to Boone, then definitely go to the women's game, because one way or another, we need a double App State win that day. And I think we're probably going to get it. So we'll go down to Boone, we'll smack them in Boone, and then the women can smack them at home. So come out and support those folks. The other thing I want to throw out, and I'm not going to do my wrestling thing, but on a serious note, while we were on, I heard on Twitter, I saw on Twitter, that Jeff Jones, the coach at ODU, is on a medical leave for the rest of the semester. His prostate cancer is back. So he's recovering from a heart attack that he had in Hawaii, I think when they were playing in Hawaii, and his prostate cancer is back. And, prayers go out to him. As much as we have rivals out there, these are, human beings that we all know. These are fun folks. These are people that we live with, have gone to school with, and want the best to happen for Jeff and his family. And I met Jeff back in 1981. Back in the world when I was working at the McDonald's at Barracks Road for the owner of the McDonald's franchise, who's a huge UVA alum, and he had me train Jeff Jones and how to work the grill at McDonald's in Barracks Road. I'm not sure Jeff ever showed up for another shift. Maybe he did. But he was a wonderful young man at that point. Now he's a little bit older than me. So, prayers out to him and his family and the whole ODU, the Monarch Nation. Nobody wants anything like that to happen. And we hope that Jeff recovers and Jeff's doing fine. So just wanted to put that out there as the human touch of what we do.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. As always, great episode. Thank you to our guests for enriching this conversation and their perspective. As always, it's what makes this show special, and we are appreciative of all the people that give us time each and every Sunday. And with that, thank you to our sponsors, as always, Montpelier Collective, Skyline Financial. If you're somebody out there who is interested in getting a chance at that coach experience, MontpelierCollective.com. Get your tickets. No limit on the number of raffle tickets you can buy to have a chance to win that experience for 2 people, as Coach Byington mentioned last week. Plug real quick for our Sound Off store. We put out some new merchandise this week, give you an opportunity to rep the Everything School. So if you're somebody looking for some Everything School gear, have it on the screen right now. You can get a chance to get that at jmusoundoff.com. We saw some orders come in today. Never taking for granted your support of our merch. It's great to see it out. Whether it's at Bridgeforth or seeing it at the AUBC. We saw some shirts this weekend. Just know it's appreciated. And with that, we'll end tonight's episode. We'll see you next week. And as always, go Dukes, JMU Sound Off. Appreciate your support, and we'll talk to you soon.